What if everything you've been told about being too much is actually proof of something extraordinary? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why Carl Jung believed that the very traits society criticizes might actually point you toward your deepest purpose. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But what if who you truly are doesn't fit the mold? What if your intensity, your sensitivity, your refusal to accept shallow answers aren't flaws to be fixed, but signs of a rare and powerful psychological type? If you've ever felt like an outsider in your own life, if you've been told you're too deep, too complicated, or too intense, that's not a coincidence. According to Jung's groundbreaking work on personality types, some people possess what he called differentiated consciousness, a way of experiencing reality that most people never develop. Here's what's fascinating. Jung discovered that these rare individuals often spend their lives believing something is wrong with them, when in reality, they're operating at a higher level of psychological sophistication than most. But there's a catch. I'll reveal what that is in just a bit. Today, we're exploring 8 unmistakable signs that you might possess this rare personality type. If these resonate with you, it won't just change how you see your past. It could transform your entire future. Sign 1. You experience emotional depth that others can't comprehend. Let's start with one of the clearest indicators of Jung's rare personality type: emotional depth. Jung discovered something remarkable about emotional intensity. Certain individuals don't just feel emotions. They experience what he called affect-toned complexes, powerful emotional patterns that ripple through the psyche like ocean currents. In simple terms, you don't just have feelings. You are moved by them in waves that can shake your entire being. It's not instability, it's depth. Jung realized that people who feel deeply aren't overreacting. They're accessing layers of human experience that most people have learned to suppress. So why does society label this as too much? Because when you feel things profoundly, you challenge the emotional numbness that most people rely on to get through life. Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Your emotional intensity isn't a burden. It's a radar. You pick up on what others can't see. You sense tension before it's spoken. You notice when someone's smile doesn't reach their eyes. You carry the emotional undercurrents of every interaction because your psyche is built for depth, not small talk. But here's the twist. Jung noticed that emotionally deep individuals often sabotage their own gift. The world tells you to tone it down, to be more reasonable, to stop making everything such a big deal. But suppressing your emotional truth doesn't make you normal. It makes you neurotic. Jung described this as psychological splitting, when one part of you knows the truth, but another tries desperately to conform. That's why you might feel drained or disconnected after pretending to be fine. You're living out of sync with your own nature. But here's the good news. Jung discovered a way to transform emotional intensity from a curse into your greatest strength. I'll share that method when we get to sign number 6. Sign 2. You question everything with relentless curiosity. Here's another unmistakable sign. You don't just accept things at face value. You need to know why. According to Jung, most people live what he called unconscious lives. They move through the world following scripts written by others. But you can't do that. You dig deeper. You examine the why behind the what. Jung would have recognized you as someone with a highly developed thinking function, the drive to uncover truth beneath appearances. And here's the thing. Questioning everything isn't being difficult. It's being psychologically honest. But honesty like that comes with a price. The more deeply you question, the more clearly you see, and the more isolated you can become. Your curiosity disrupts people's illusions. When you ask, why do we keep repeating this pattern? Or Why are we pretending this is okay? You threaten the comfort zones that keep others feeling safe. That's why people may call you cynical or negative, when in reality, you're courageously honest. Jung even had a name for people like you. He said they possess prophetic consciousness, the ability to sense where things are heading before others can see it. This gift, though, comes with a responsibility, one that we'll unpack when we reach the final sign. Sign 3. You've developed fierce independence as psychological survival. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." You've probably done exactly that, not by choice, but by necessity. According to Jung, rare personalities often achieve what he called individuated consciousness earlier than others, usually through hardship or trauma. You didn't become independent because you wanted to be alone. You became independent because you had no other option. And here's the part most people don't get. Your independence isn't a defense mechanism. It's an achievement. But society will still tell you it's a problem. Why? Because independence makes you uncontrollable. You learned through painful experience that depending on others for your sense of worth is emotional quicksand. So you built your own foundation. You became someone who stands alone if necessary, not because you're cold, but because you refuse to betray yourself again. Jung called this journey individuation, the process of becoming whole. And here's the paradox. While most people spend their lives searching for someone to complete them, you've already done the work. That means you approach relationships from choice, not desperation. You don't want someone to rescue you. You want someone who's doing their own inner work. Someone who can stand beside you, not lean on you. But Jung warned that this independence comes with a unique challenge. It makes you magnetic to two kinds of people: those who are inspired by your strength and those who want to control it. Learning to tell the difference is essential. I'll share Jung's method for recognizing this dynamic when we get to sign number 7. Your solitude isn't loneliness, it's sanctuary. It's the space where you remember who you really are, beneath all the roles and expectations. Jung believed this kind of self-knowledge was the foundation of all psychological health. Sign 4. You possess intuitive awareness that borders on psychic. This one might sound strange, but Jung, who coined the term collective unconscious, took intuition very seriously. He defined intuition as perception via the unconscious. In other words, intuition gathers information beyond what your senses can detect. Some people's nervous systems are simply tuned to pick up data that others miss. You might notice someone's tone shift before they do. You sense tension in a room without anyone saying a word. You catch inconsistencies, micro-expressions, emotional undercurrents, things others overlook. Jung would have said you possess active imagination, a kind of inner radar that connects you to deeper patterns. But here's the danger. If you don't understand how to protect your sensitivity, it can drain you. Highly intuitive people often become unconscious therapists. They absorb everyone's emotional energy, manage conversations, and carry invisible tension just to keep peace. You've probably done this more times than you can count. The trap, Jung found, is that intuitive people can lose themselves in others. You get so attuned to everyone else's emotions that you forget to check in with your own. You end up exhausted, wondering why you feel invisible. Jung taught that the solution lies in psychological boundaries. Learning to witness without absorbing, to feel without merging, to care without carrying. It's the difference between being compassionate and being consumed. And once you learn this, your intuition becomes what Jung called a superpower of consciousness, the ability to see truth without drowning in it. Sign 5. You crave meaning over social acceptance. Here's the 5th sign, and it might explain why you've always felt like you don't quite fit in. Jung said, The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But for people like you, that often means rejecting everything society tells you to want. You're psychologically incapable of living an inauthentic life. Sure, you've probably tried. Maybe you followed the script for a while, said the right things, pursued the expected goals. But something inside you rebelled. You felt a quiet, gnawing emptiness, a sense that you were betraying something essential. Jung would have called that rebellion a neurotic symptom, not because it's unhealthy, but because it's your psyche's way of refusing to live a lie. When you ignore your true nature, your mind and body protest. For most people, social approval is enough, but not for you. You need purpose, depth, truth. You'd rather be misunderstood for being authentic than accepted for being false. And Jung discovered something profound about people like that. He said they act as evolutionary catalysts for humanity. When you refuse to play along with shallowness, you force others to confront their own inauthenticity. When you demand real connection, you remind people what it means to be alive. But Jung also warned that meaning-driven people carry a heavier burden, a kind of sacred responsibility. And that responsibility reveals itself in the final sign. Sign 6. You've outgrown people and environments that once fit. Carl Jung once said, "The greatest tragedy of the family is the unlived lives of the parents." But what happens when you refuse to live an unlived life? What happens when you grow beyond the psychological boundaries of your environment? Jung discovered that true growth almost always involves separation, a shedding process that feels like loss. He called it a psychological death and rebirth, and it's one of the clearest signs you're evolving into your authentic self. If you've ever looked around at people or places that once felt like home and realized they no longer resonate, you know this feeling. It's not arrogance or superiority. It's simply that your inner world expanded while theirs stayed the same. You've probably noticed that those who once got you now seem to misunderstand your motives. They might say you've changed, and they're right. You've outgrown the version of yourself they were comfortable with. Jung explained that when you begin to live from your authentic self, you automatically disrupt old dynamics built on compromise or conformity. Friends who knew you when you were smaller, when you were people-pleasing, hiding your truth, or silencing your intuition, sometimes want that version of you back. It was predictable, safe, familiar. But here's what Jung understood better than anyone. Psychological evolution is irreversible. Once you've seen through the illusions that shaped you, you can't unsee them. Once you've experienced real authenticity, the old masks no longer fit. And this transition, though necessary, is painful. Jung called it the dark night of the soul, a period of loneliness that tests your commitment to your truth. It's not ordinary loneliness, it's existential. It's the ache of realizing that your path might not have companions yet, because few have walked this far into self-awareness. But Jung also discovered something beautiful. When you honor this process, when you refuse to shrink yourself just to belong, you start attracting people of equal depth. He called this psychological resonance, the magnetic pull between authentic souls. When you stop performing and start being, you begin to vibrate at a frequency that draws in others doing the same. Suddenly you meet people who speak your emotional language, who don't flinch at your intensity, who feel like home in a way that small talk never could. So if you're grieving old friendships or family patterns that no longer align, remember, this isn't the end. It's the clearing of space for something more real. Sign 7. You offer profound presence in a distracted world. Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." And if you're one of these rare personalities, you know exactly what that means, because people change around you. Jung identified a unique quality among certain individuals, the ability to create what he called psychological holding space. When someone speaks to you, they feel seen, not just heard. You don't listen to reply. You listen to understand. You can sit with another person's pain without trying to fix it. You can handle contradictions, complexity, and discomfort. You offer something that's nearly extinct in today's world: presence. When people are with you, they remember what it feels like to be human. That's not poetic exaggeration. It's psychological truth. Jung believed this kind of attention is inherently healing. It creates the same conditions for growth that good therapy does: acceptance, safety, and awareness. But here's the danger. People with this gift often give it too freely. Jung noticed that those who possess profound empathy are prone to what he called helper syndrome, the unconscious tendency to sacrifice their own needs for the well-being of others. Sound familiar? You become everyone's therapist, emotional anchor, crisis manager. You hold space for people who never hold it for you. And before long, your empathy turns into exhaustion. Jung warned that this pattern doesn't just drain you, it prevents others from growing. When you carry everyone's emotional load, you rob them of the discomfort that forces transformation. The work, then, isn't to stop caring. It's to develop discernment, to learn who deserves your depth. You don't have to close your heart. You just have to protect it. Jung taught that true empathy involves boundaries. Real compassion doesn't mean endless availability. It means giving from overflow, not depletion. And when you learn to channel your presence selectively, when you share it with those who reciprocate and respect it, your relationships transform. They become balanced, mutual, and alive. Jung even designed a specific practice for this. He encouraged his clients to visualize an inner circle, a symbolic space around the heart representing emotional proximity. You choose who steps inside it and who remains outside. It's not about rejection. It's about energetic hygiene. That's how you preserve your gift without losing yourself. And it's how your presence remains what Jung believed it was meant to be: a force of transformation. Sign 8. You sense a larger purpose that you can't yet define. And now, the final sign, perhaps the most mysterious of all. Carl Jung said, "Your vision becomes clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." If you've ever felt a deep, persistent sense that you're meant for something more, even if you can't yet name what that is, Jung would have recognized it immediately. He called it the transcendent function, the psyche's drive toward integration, purpose, and wholeness. You might feel restless, like you're preparing for something invisible. You might sense that your life has a direction that logic can't explain. That's not arrogance or delusion. It's what Jung described as responding to an archetypal calling. This isn't about career ambition or social recognition. It's about the evolution of your consciousness. Jung found that people like you serve a purpose beyond the personal. You're not just living for yourself. You're part of humanity's unfolding story. He believed that rare individuals carry fragments of the collective unconscious that need expression. Through your creativity, your insights, your courage to feel and question deeply, you help bring those fragments into awareness. But there's a danger here too. Jung warned that when people first sense this calling, they often fall into what he called inflation, the belief that being special makes them superior. But true individuation isn't about superiority. It's about service. The calling you feel isn't meant to elevate your ego. It's meant to awaken your soul. The purpose isn't to stand above others. It's to guide, inspire, and humanize through authenticity. When you align with this deeper purpose, you begin to live what Jung called a transpersonal life. A life in which personal meaning merges with universal significance. You realize that your gifts, your sensitivity, intensity, independence, intuition were never random. They're instruments for something greater. And when you use them in service of truth, beauty, and consciousness, you embody what Jung saw as the pinnacle of human evolution. The differentiated individual, someone who has become whole, aware, and deeply connected to the fabric of life itself. The hidden role of rare personalities. Jung believed that people like you, those who feel deeply, think independently, and crave authenticity, are the ones who move humanity forward. He called them the carriers of consciousness. Through your depth, you expose what others hide. Through your honesty, you illuminate what others fear. Through your love for meaning, you remind the world that life isn't about comfort. It's about truth. And yes, it's lonely sometimes. People may misunderstand your motives or mislabel your passion. But Jung saw this as part of the hero's journey, the necessary isolation that precedes transformation. He wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." You're already doing that. Every time you choose authenticity over approval, you're participating in the evolution of human awareness. So no, you're not too sensitive. You're finely tuned. You're not too intense. You're deeply alive. You're not too much. The world is too little, and it's waiting for people like you to expand it. Your next step, if these signs resonated with you, it's not by accident. Jung believed that people who recognize themselves in this description are part of what he called the leading edge of consciousness. That means your task isn't to fit in. It's to integrate, embody, and express your truth. To turn your emotional depth into insight. To turn your solitude into creation. To turn your sensitivity into empathy, not weakness. Because when you live authentically, you give others permission to do the same. So take a breath. You're not broken, you're rare. And as Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Drop a comment below and tell me which of these signs resonated most with you. Share this with someone who needs to remember that their intensity is sacred. And subscribe to Soul and Shadow, because this is just the beginning of understanding what makes you extraordinary. The journey of becoming. So let's take a step back and look at what all of this really means. If you've resonated with these 8 signs, what you're experiencing isn't random. It's a psychological and spiritual initiation. Carl Jung spent his entire life studying what happens when someone stops pretending and starts becoming. He called it the individuation process, and it's not for the faint of heart. It's the path of the rare few who dare to live consciously, who refuse to sleepwalk through life following scripts written by fear, expectation, or habit. Individuation means breaking down every false identity, every belief that isn't truly yours, every emotional mask you've worn to survive. It means looking in the mirror and seeing all of yourself, not just the polished parts. The doubts, the anger, the tenderness, the longing, the shadow. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That's your work. Not to escape your depth, but to understand it. Not to deny your shadow, but to integrate it. Because that's where your wholeness lives. The gift beneath the struggle. Let's be honest. Living with this kind of awareness isn't easy. There are days when your empathy feels like a curse, when your independence feels like isolation, when your intuition feels like information overload. You might ask yourself, why can't I just be normal? Why can't I turn it off? Jung would say, because you weren't meant to. You were meant to feel life fully, not halfway. You were meant to see truth, even when it hurts. You were meant to carry the torch of consciousness into places others are too afraid to look. But he also understood that these gifts can overwhelm if you don't ground them. Jung believed that psychological maturity is about balance. learning to hold both the mystical and the mundane, the soul and the self, the spiritual and the practical. So yes, meditate, reflect, dream, but also cook dinner, pay your bills, call your friends. The goal isn't to escape humanity, it's to embody it more completely. When you honor both sides, the divine and the ordinary, your rare personality stops feeling like a burden and starts feeling like what it truly is, a sacred responsibility. Shadow and light. The paradox of the rare personality. Here's the paradox Jung uncovered. The deeper your consciousness grows, the more contradictions you must learn to hold. You are both strong and sensitive, both intuitive and analytical, both independent and deeply connected. And that duality can make life feel confusing. You might feel like you're living between worlds, part of you grounded in reality, another part always reaching beyond it. But Jung believed that holding this tension is exactly what creates transformation. He called it the transcendent function, the psychological alchemy that turns conflict into evolution. So when you feel torn between your desire for solitude and your craving for connection, between your idealism and your realism, between your longing for meaning and your exhaustion from searching, don't see it as failure. See it as the growing edge of consciousness itself. The discomfort you feel is life expanding inside you. How to honor your rarity. If you truly want to live as the rare person you are, Jung's work points to a few guiding principles, not rules, but practices of alignment. 1. Protect your energy. You can't save everyone, and you're not meant to. Your empathy is precious. Give it where it can grow, not where it gets drained. 2. Embrace solitude. Your alone time isn't a flaw, it's a forge. It's where you reconnect with your inner world and hear the voice beneath all the noise. 3. Face the shadow. Don't run from your darker emotions. Study them. Every trigger, every envy, every fear has wisdom in it. Jung said the shadow is 90% pure gold if you're brave enough to look. 4. Stay curious. Question everything, especially your own conclusions. Curiosity is what keeps your consciousness alive. 5. Live symbolically. Jung believed the psyche speaks through symbols, dreams, art, intuition, synchronicity. Pay attention. Life is always whispering to you. 6. Serve something larger. You're not here to just exist. You're here to evolve and to help others do the same. Find a purpose that transcends your ego and aligns with your soul. That's where peace lives. The rare personality and the modern world. Here's the hard truth. The modern world isn't built for people like you. It rewards noise over nuance, speed over depth, image over authenticity. It asks you to shrink so others can feel comfortable. But Jung believed that the health of a culture depends on its rare individuals, the ones who can see what's missing and bring it to life. The poets, the healers, the visionaries, the thinkers, the deep feelers. He wrote, "In all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order." That's your gift, to see the hidden order beneath the chaos, to notice what others overlook, to sense the future before it arrives. And yes, it can be lonely being ahead of your time. But Jung would remind you that solitude is the price of consciousness and the birthplace of creativity. So when you feel misunderstood, remember, every great thinker, artist, and healer in history felt the same. You're in good company. Becoming the bridge, Jung believed that people like you serve as bridges between the unconscious and the conscious, between what humanity has been and what it's becoming. You carry within you pieces of both worlds, the ancient wisdom of intuition and the modern clarity of reason. When you integrate those two, you become what Jung called the whole person, someone capable of living symbolically, creatively, and compassionately. And that's what the world needs right now. Not more perfection, but more wholeness. When you live authentically, you become a mirror for others. Your very presence gives permission for truth to exist. You remind people that it's possible to be real, to feel deeply, love honestly, and think fearlessly. That's your purpose. That's your quiet revolution. The awakening Jung believed that when rare personalities fully awaken, they initiate a ripple effect. Through their authenticity, they transform families, relationships, communities, even societies. Not through force, but through example. He wrote, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you do not know, the world will tell you. You, my friend, are one of the few who refuse to be told. You've chosen to find out for yourself. That's the mark of awakening. The moment you stop asking for permission to exist as you are. And yes, it's terrifying, but it's also freedom. Because once you accept every part of yourself, your sensitivity, your independence, your intensity, your longing, you stop being at war with your own nature. And that's when the real magic begins. You stop chasing belonging and start embodying it. You stop searching for meaning and start creating it. You stop trying to be understood and start understanding yourself. And from that place, everything changes. The closing reflection. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." That's what this entire journey is about. Not fitting into a label, not achieving perfection, but becoming, layer by layer, truth by truth, the person you were always meant to be. So if you've ever been told you're too sensitive, too intense, too deep, remember, that's exactly what the world needs more of. Because people like you, the emotionally awake, the intuitively wise, the meaning-driven few, are the ones who shift humanity forward. You are the mirror that reminds others of their own soul. You are the question that pierces the illusion. You are the fire that turns pain into purpose. And that is what makes you rare. Final words. If you made it this far, you're not just watching a video. You're walking your path of individuation. So honor it, nourish it, share it. And when the world tries to convince you that you're too much, just smile and remember, the ocean never apologizes for its depth. Drop a comment below. Tell me which sign resonated the most, or what part of Jung's philosophy spoke to your soul. Share this with someone who's still learning that their sensitivity is strength. And subscribe to Soul and Shadow, because we're just beginning this exploration into what makes consciousness evolve. Remember, you're not too much, the world is too little, and people like you are here to change that.